Nice
Okay,
to know
hi
you.
everybody again. As I said, executive function is a quality of life issue. So we're here because this is not a joke, this is a quality of life issue. So when we have executive function challenges, they can really interfere with our ability to get the important things done. So what I'm going to do first is I'll talk about executive function for a little bit, and I'll do a lot of Q&A today, Bob. But I'm going to give you some basics about executive function. Now, looking in the comments there, people it seems like most people are here because you yourself have executive function challenges or you're trying to figure out if you do. So let's start at the beginning here. So this is the human brain. For the first thing that I want to mention is that if you have ADHD or diagnosed with ADHD, if you don't like the term ADHD, but you have symptoms of ADHD, and this is something that is challenging in your life. If you think you have ADHD and you haven't been diagnosed, any of those things, then executive function is at the core of what's going on. ADHD is a has everything to do with executive function. That is what ADHD is. So it interferes with how we execute. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the term executive function. Executive function, what's going on in the brain, our brain is trying to help us to execute important tasks and unimportant tasks. I might tell you that my playing guitar is really, it's important because it's fun for me and it's a passion and a hobby, but it's not the most important thing, especially if I'm playing guitar when I should be doing my taxes right now because it's tax season. Then that is not the important priority. But executive function is used to execute all sorts of tasks. Complicated tasks, uncomplicated tasks, it helps us to execute tasks. That's why it's called executive. It's the part of the brain that helps us to execute. So, executive function generally takes place in the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex, the front third of the brain. This front, if you put your hand on your forehead, it's this area right behind where your hand is. That is generally where executive function is taking place. And the good news is that executive function can get better in a couple of different ways. One way that executive function can, quote, get better is that we can do things that don't interfere with it. Okay, so first I'm talking about removing things that interfere with executive function. So, for example, sleep has been a challenge for much of my life. Getting better sleep improves executive function, or at least isn't making it worse. Not sleeping is making it worse, is how my brain thinks of it, really. Things that interfere with me mental health wise, traumas absolutely interfere with mental health. How we feel in our bodies physically, our digestive system. So the first thing we can think of is that executive function can get better if we're not doing the things to make it worse. So whatever things are interfering with it, if we can get to a baseline, like if I had a magic wand, I would want to get everybody I work with really dialed in with sleep, nutrition, exercise, and working through any sorts of traumas or mental health challenges that we're experiencing. So I really would want to see what's the baseline. If we could really get somewhere and just see what a baseline would be like, that's what I would want to see first. So that's one way. Another way that we can improve executive function is that the brain literally, on a very literal sense, changes. The use it or lose it. If I don't play drums, if I started playing drums every day for a while and did that consistently for a couple months, had a teacher, my brain would literally, the neurons in my brains would start connecting, use it or lose it. I would start using my brain, telling my brain this is an important activity in my life. And I would gain neural connections that help me build skills in that area. So the brain literally changes. It can also, we can have our brains damaged in different ways. When people have traumatic brain injuries, often it happens in the frontal part of the brain, because oftentimes head injuries come from here, and so that can interfere, obviously impact executive function. But either way, the point is that our brains change. Now, for kids, their brains are really developing very quickly, and this part of the brain continues to develop until we're 25 or 30 years old. Now, as somebody who is beyond 25 or 30 years old, yes, your brain can still build these new neural networks, but we're not looking for the same type of change that we would be if we were, for example, working with a 10-year-old. So, but does that mean that there's no hope? Absolutely not. Because the third thing that I want to mention in terms of what helps improve executive function is the systems, or what I call the executive function trifecta. So, the executive function trifecta is how, and if you're taking notes, this might be a place where you might jot some notes down. I personally, in my methodology, and there are tons of great experts out there that have great methodologies, and I wouldn't discount any of them. I don't care what any of them do, though. I'll tell you how my brain likes to perceive this, and you can use the parts of my model that you like. Sorry, there's something in my eyeball which is interfering with my executive function because I'm concentrating on this more than I want to be. So, and where was my brain? Now my executive function has to refocus because it is distracting. Um, so the third way I talk about the executive function trifecta. The trifecta is when we're looking at how to help somebody with executive function challenges, I want to help give them three things in the trifecta: systems, mindsets, habits, and routines. I'll go through those really quick. So if you're taking notes, you might want to jot down systems, mindsets, habits, and routines. The reason you might want to jot that down is because later on, you can look at each one of those. You can make your own Venn diagram or jot them on 3 different pieces of paper and write out for yourself where you have systems that you like, that are working for you, where you're lacking them. Same with mindsets, same with habits and routines. And I will go into a little bit more depth about that, so you'll understand what I'm saying. So essentially, as the brain is developing and we're learning how to execute on tasks, whether it's playing video games, doing homework, getting a driver's license, getting a job, doing our work, doing whatever goals we have, whatever types of things, our brain uses these executive functions to help us execute on these tasks. Now, I talk about 13 or 14 different executive functions, and I'll get back to the systems, mindsets, habits, and routines in a few moments. But I talk about 13 or 14 different executive functions, skill sets. So these are, again, skill sets. They can be built. It's not that we have a fixed mindset. When I mention mindset, where we just say, oh, I'm just not good at math, I'm just not good at music, I'm just not creative, I'm just not this, I'm just bad at that, I'm just horrible at this, I just can't do this. That fixed mindset does not serve us. That keeps us stuck. So our brains do change, can change, and yes, it can be challenging, but it can happen. So I talk about 13 or 14 different executive functions. That means those are the specific skill sets that the brain is helping us to do. So that would be things like, different experts talk about it differently. So for example, one of the people on my summit, he says that there's one executive function and he calls it self-reg or self-regulation, and he puts it all under one. And if you look at like Russ Barkley, I think Russ Barkley talks about 5 or 8, I can't remember. Some people say there's 3, some say there's 10. So different people that are experts that are really, really good at this stuff, we don't all agree on how many there are. The reason I say 13 or 14, and I'm not even committing to either, because some days I'll say 13, some days I'll say 14, and it changes, and I may have 15 someday. But as I develop my methodologies, I really look at how to articulate these things in terms of languaging that people can use. Because if somebody says, oh yeah, the executive function of task initiation, I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? Why don't you just say getting started, task initiation? Why do you guys say task initiation? I'm sorry, Bob, if you say task initiation. No, that's no offense at all. But I am talking to so many people, like I want to put this in language that really everybody can latch onto. So my 13 or 14 are things like planning is an executive function, organization, attention is an executive function. But you might think focus, attention, concentration, those are all the same thing. In my book, focus, attention, concentration, that's the brain helps us to focus, to pay attention, to concentrate. The brain also helps us to not get distracted. That is called inhibition in a more clinical way, but that just means not allowing myself to get distracted, inhibiting distractions. not getting, now if I am not inhibiting distractions, I am unfocused. I am not concentrating. I am not paying attention. So anyhow, executive functions, the 13 or 14 have things are like planning, time management, inhibition, um, or task initiation, self-starting, follow through, task completion, finishing, um, and then the attention, the focus, the prioritizing. Can we prioritize not the guitar over doing my taxes, because the guitar is a lot more fun than my taxes? So prioritizing the important thing over the fun thing when it matters. So executive function is how do we do what skills do we need to do the important things? So I'm not going to go through all the 13 or 14. I have PDFs about that. And I just want to give you an idea that it's whatever the brain has to do in order to execute the important task at hand. So all of you sitting here, if you feel like putting something in the chat, I would love to see what is something that you struggle with executive function. Getting out of the house in the morning, getting to work on time, your taxes, doing chores, whatever. And I'm interested, if the chat is distracting to your executive function, close the chat. So yeah, finishing things, time management, being on time, keeping promises. Ooh, that's a good one. Tracking, I love that. I love that. That has a lot to do with executive function. Prioritizing, completing, getting started with work, staying on task, all of the above, time blindness, being on time. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Reviewing our taxes, the concept of time, prioritizing, getting started, making smart decisions. Decision making is part of executive function. Decision making is part of executive function. Excellent. Yeah. The prioritizing, doing the very most important thing that I should be doing. Yeah. Okay, awesome. So we are all anything paperwork related, anything tedious is hard for me to execute on. Okay, these are excellent. So again, I'm going to now circle back to the trifecta, the executive function trifecta. Now, if I want to execute on something, whether it's something that's a preferred activity like guitar, or a non-preferred activity like my taxes, those are my examples, whatever your examples are. The difference between preferred and non-preferred is massive, because I'm still using tons of executive function on the preferred things. And a lot of times we, especially those of us that are over 30 years old, have been given messages from the world that if we aren't doing what we're supposed to be doing, that we're lazy, we don't try hard enough, we must not care about these things. There are all these shaming messages that we get. We need to just pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. We just need to try harder. We need to, if we would just fill in the blank, then everything would be okay. And we've gotten these messages, and I would imagine all of us here have felt deep shame as we've been learning to live in this world and trying to be like, well, I really was doing the best. I thought I was doing the best I could. And then it starts to get daunting. We start to get more resistant. And we're learning how to navigate this world. Now, all of us have learned how to execute on certain things we never ever wanted to learn how to execute on. And I'm going to keep using taxes or chores, or for example, like I like doing windows, I hate doing floors, but I have learned how to clean the floor because I have found workarounds. So anyhow, all of those have figured out workarounds to doing executive function. So, that brings me back to what I was saying before. So the three ways the brain can continue to change, so we can gain new neurons. That's how we can improve executive function. And sorry, the second one is that I mentioned, whatever the heck that was. The third one that I wanted to mention is that we can learn strategies. This is not necessarily changing the brain, but we can learn new strategies, new ways to approach doing things, workarounds, tips and tricks. Like we figure out how to have what are called compensatory strategies where we compensate, where we're able to get the thing done well enough. So I'll tell you with the taxes, like a strategy that I use for executing with something I don't want to do, like taxes, is accountability. Tomorrow, my assistant and I, she's basically holding my hand. I'm basically paying her to tell me, Seth, open QuickBooks. Seth, look at this. Seth, sign that. Like, I'm horrible at it. I know that's a fixed mindset, but I don't care to ever be good at it. I care to get it done well enough, execute well enough on it, be done with it. But the accountability is a compensatory strategy. I found a person who accepts me, who doesn't shame me, who's very supportive, who knows how to do it, who's better at it than I am, who will guide me through the process compassionately and help me get it done, and who will push me and say, nope, we're not done. We need to do this. We're going to need 2 more hours. You need to do these 3 tasks by next time, whatever. So that is a strategy that I use. Other strategies that I might use, let's say with organization. One of my favorite organizational strategies is minimalism and decluttering. I can't keep a bunch of crap around. I can't manage it. So I have very few things. I have like 7 black shirts because I know that they match everything. Steve Jobs was known for, he would always wear the same thing, a black shirt, blue jeans, and tennis shoes. So he never had to think about what to wear ever. Now that's a bit excessive for me, but generally speaking though, my stuff, physical clutter, digital clutter, subscriptions, thing, like it's very minimal. I have what I really want in my life. Yes, I have a lot of guitars, but this is my guilty pleasure. I'm cool with that. But I don't have a lot of clutter in my life because I can't manage it. So that is a compensatory strategy for organization. Now, let's talk about self-starting, task initiation, task completion, follow through, those sorts of things. Well, this is one of my favorite compensatory strategies, using timers in a bunch of different ways to, I call it annoy thyself, to annoy myself and to help me focus, to help me concentrate, to help me execute on things. So essentially, we have these systems, mindsets, habits, and routines. We need to learn systems. Systems are, now they're similar to skill sets. They're related to skill sets, but I look at the trifecta different than the skill sets. So let's say a skill set is planning, time management, getting through time blindness, those are executive function skill sets. But the system that I would talk about when I'm talking about that stuff is calendaring, planning, daily planning, monthly planning, yearly planning, goal planning, anything about planning. Those are more the systems. So here's what I want you to think about. So essentially think about this, the prefrontal cortex, being a toolbox or a toolkit, and it's filled with all these tools. Every single one of us out here is able to plan, organize, manage time for, especially for preferred activities, get started, especially for preferred activities, follow through, especially for preferred activities, blah, 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 blah. We're able to resist distractions. Imagine the kid who they seem so distractible, and let's say that they're playing video games and their parents are like, dinner's ready, I just told you 5 times dinner's ready. And they're like ignoring somebody saying dinner's ready because they are focused. They are using executive function on a preferred activity. The executive function is there. The tool is able to be used in that context. So executive function, this is like a toolbox. And within this toolbox, we have these different tools like the prioritizing, the decision making, and this, that, and the other. We have these different tools. Now, the tools have different levels of complexity and have different contexts that they can be used. So let's say this is a tool, this hammer is a tool, it's a more simple tool. I can use the tool for many different things. When I was a baby, I could not use this tool. It would have been dangerous. Now I know many, many ways to use this tool. And this is a very effective tool, and in certain contexts I can use it, and I can think outside the box and use it in other contexts. If a child can, let's say, use their focus for video games but isn't able to globalize or generalize that skill set into doing homework that they don't feel like doing, well, then we want to help them learn skills around using that tool in different contexts. Does that make sense? Good. Now here's another tool. This is a much more complex tool. This tool is way more complex than this one, and I know how to use this in many different ways, and somebody who's never really used this would not know how to use this very well. But they're different. I want you to imagine these tools that there are different levels of complexity that we can gain. So if you're really struggling to execute in a certain area of your life and it's interfering with your quality of life, as I started with at the very beginning today, then I want to encourage you that you can learn to use the tool more effectively with systems, mindsets, habits, and routines. The skills can get better as far as the neurons connecting. The skills can get better as far as learning different workarounds or strategies to get the thing done. And the skills can get better by removing things that interfere with executive function. So we can get better at using these tools more effectively. I just want to tell you there's so much hope, there's so much hope, there's so much hope, there's so much hope, there's so much hope. I'm in the business of helping people create change. I see it all the time. People create change. I know this is not a joke that some of you are in a very difficult place in life. Just because there's so many people here today, there's got to be some of us who are really struggling with getting the important things done. There are probably a great deal of us here today that are it's really interfering. I want to tell you there's so much hope, there's so much hope, there's so much hope. And I'm not just saying that. And I will also tell you that the key in my methodology to creating change is annoying, because the key to creating change in my methodology, and you can think whatever you want, but to me, it's baby steps. And it's annoying because so much has to change, and it's so daunting. How am I going to get there? How am I going to climb that mountain? This pile of responsibilities or things that have to be dealt with that I don't feel like dealing with, that I don't even know where to start. I just want to address mental health is the number one most important thing, taking care of ourselves, being compassionate with ourselves, and that is a practice as well. That is a practice as well. So there's so much hope. The brain can change. The systems can change. Anyhow, I just wanted to honor any of those of you that are suffering or struggling, that I know that the struggle is real, and I honor that. And I just want to hold a little space for you right this moment and tell you that even if I don't see you, I see you, I feel you, I've been there many, many, many times, and it can change. And that is what we're in the business of doing. But I don't care to just tell you that in a fluffy way. I care to tell you how. And I'm going to go back to that systems, mindsets, habits, and routines. So, and this is where I'll sort of wrap up today, Bob. The systems, mindsets, habits, and routines, not the skills, but the systems. I talk about maybe 10 systems, and I talk about them in the context of students, but you can apply them to anything. I'll go through a few of them, not all of them. We all must have a system for planning. And I know that some of you are like, Seth, I hate planning. I hate planners. I don't like planning. I don't want to plan. Well, you do plan. We do plan in preferred activities. Whether or not you write it out or that type of stuff doesn't matter. One thing I like to do is woodwork, build things. And I built a piece of like a lawn chair thing last year. And the way I planned it was I would lay in bed at night trying to go to sleep, and I would envision it. I would envision every piece, about how big it had to be, and what was needed, all the materials. I did that in my head because I'm very visual spatial. I enjoy doing that. My friend David helped me work on it, and he's like, "Let me see the plan," or what this isn't going to work, blah blah. And I'm like, and he's a carpenter. I'm like, trust me. But that's not how he works. But he plans as well, but he plans in a much more linear, concrete way than I do with something like that. But for me, that was fine. So I'm telling you this because you might be saying, Seth, I hate planners. I don't need a planner. I'm not saying you necessarily need a planner. Probably help if you had the skill sets around it and the resistance wasn't there, and somebody compassionately showed you ways to use it that worked for you, which I call Franken study, which doesn't always happen. But we all need ways to plan, and we can all develop skill sets around planning. So again, I'm talking about some of the systems, mindsets, habits, routines. Systems would be planning. Systems would be organizing. So the things that we need to organize is our workspaces, our hobby spaces, our bathrooms, our kitchens, the spaces. Is it super cluttered, decluttered? Are things labeled? Are they easy to find? So we have systems for organization. And we have systems for focusing. How can we create systems to help us focus and stay on task, or accountability, or this, that, or the other? So we have these different systems. How do we hold old papers or old things that we do need? Do we have a system for archiving, a system for filing, a system for this, that, and the other? So we have these systems. Now, the next thing I said systems, mindsets, habits, routines. This is in the executive function trifecta. The second thing from systems, if we're going to help somebody create change in baby steps, we give them systems. We also work with the mindset. The main mindset that blocks all of us, that holds us back, again, in my methodology, you may not agree with this, that's totally fine. In the way that I teach it and see it, the thing that holds us back in terms of mindset is really inspired by Stephen Pressfield. If any of you are interested in Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art. But he talks about the resistance. To me, the main mindset that holds us back is the resistance. I don't want to, this is stupid. When am I ever going to use this? I hate this. This is so annoying. I don't feel like it. I'll do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. I don't feel like it right now. So the resistance is anything that prevents us from executing on something that is really in service to our well-being, to our quality of life. So for example, my taxes, I don't want to, but for my quality of life, I needed to get this done, or I'll be paying fees or penalties or have legal problems with it or blah, blah, blah. But the execution and the tediousness and how it makes my head spin, and it is very challenging for my brain to navigate. I don't feel like it. This is stupid. I'll do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. Maybe I'll just get an extension. This is not a good time. Things like that. Anything that my brain says to prevent me from executing on that task. So that is the mindset. The mindset, the problem is the resistance. And then the other mindset, the solution is more of the Carol Dweck methodology, the growth mindset, or the I can, or the mindset, the baby steps, that I can break it down into small chunks. I can handle this. Yes, it's not fun. It's not easy, but I can do this. I can ask for help. We'll get through this. Yes, it's daunting. It's overwhelming. I can make it less overwhelming. I can make a plan. I can yada, yada. So the third one is habits and routines in the trifecta. Systems, mindsets, habits, and routines. Executive function habits and routines are pretty much what they would sound like. What are the habits and routines? We have good and bad habits. Which ones are serving you? Which ones are not? So do we have self-care habits and routines around work, around housekeeping stuff, like basic, like cooking, shopping, things like that? Habits and routines around communication with other people, around managing bills and communication with people and emails and phone calls. Habits and routines for going to bed, for waking up, et cetera, et cetera. So if we have these systems, mindsets, if we have the system, like we know a great way to plan, a great way to organize, a great way to execute, we have good systems around something, but we don't have the habit and routine. And this I hear a lot from parents. They'll be like, but my kid knows how to use a planner. But my kid knows to put their name in the corner of their top of their paper. But my kid knows how to do this. I don't care. They have the system. They know how to do the system. They don't have the habit and routine. So how do we compassionately, empathetically guide a human being to build a habit and routine in a way that works for them? How do we make it concrete for them? How do we baby step it so that they can move forward in a reasonable way? So if we have systems, but we don't have a habit and routine around them, then it doesn't help. If we have systems, but we have a mindset that we're not going to use the system and build a habit and routine around it, then it doesn't help any. So I talk about the systems, mindsets, habits, routines, and then my job is how do I, especially now, I imagine all of us adults are very good at the resistance to things that we want to resist. Like we're good at it. We've practiced it for many years. Well, how I can tell you that you can change your mindset and move through the resistance, because what my job is how, especially think about a teenager who, and this is, I work with middle, high school, college, but particularly I think some of the most challenging students are probably juniors and seniors in high school who are so overwhelmed. They don't know even where to start to get caught up. They just are like, Seth, why should I even try? I'm failing all my classes. Why even try? I nothing's going to work, nothing's going to help. And they may even be right. And that point, I want to be honest and help them figure out what to do at that point. But like they may fail all their classes. Should they even put energy into this and blah, blah, blah? And how do we weigh that out? But it can be very daunting. Um, so if I'm able to work with them, my job is how do I help them move forward and execute on something where there's so much resistance? And how do I help them take baby steps where eventually, when we stack those wins and have a lot of baby steps, they add up and it creates big change. So I don't know if you're familiar with the thing called a hockey stick chart. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the hockey stick chart. So I don't have my executive fund. There we go, my Sharpie handy. So hockey stick chart looks something like a hockey stick, and these are used in all sorts of different contexts in the world. But a hockey stick graph starts where you're starting here, and imagine that any of you who are stuck with something on something, you're starting and you're getting little tiny baby steps, and it feels like you're not even like there's no progress. It's like watching a kid grow taller and measuring by millimeters, and it just doesn't seem like, or fractions of millimeters, but what happens is they are growing, and so anyhow, we are gathering all these little wins, all these baby steps, and then there starts to be momentum here. Things really start to change for us. There comes a time when they start to get much easier, and the momentum can more carry itself, and that to me is when we've gotten to the maintenance phase in any given place where we're like, okay, I have a good system for planning. Now I can maintain my planner. I can now better my organizational systems, blah, blah, blah. So we sort of get to this place where now we're sort of in the habits and routines. I think that's a good way to look at it too. Here we're working on systems, mindsets, practicing the systems, practicing bit by bit by bit. And eventually, when it becomes more of a habit and routine, then it's like we've really come to a different place. So I just want to be so encouraging to you, again, that there are those three ways that things do change, that the brain changes, we can get new workarounds and strategies for working with these things, and we can remove the things that are in the way. And it takes time, and it's not easy. And again, for those of you who are really struggling with something, just to honor you and tell you seriously, I feel it, and I've been there, and but the baby steps are everything. And I think I'll end with this. So we talked about systems, mindsets, habits, and routines. We talked about different executive functions, the front part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, and how the brain is developing and helps us to execute. So the thing that I want to end with is the NEGU, the never ever give up, never ever give up, NEGU, NEGU, never ever give up. I just want to be so encouraging again for those of you that are having real struggles. Please just take another baby step, another baby step. I know some of you might be saying what I might be saying in that situation. Seth, you don't get it. I can't take another baby step. This is exhausting. I don't know where to even start. Just, I guess, and if there was a place to start, Bob, I would probably say write down those words, systems, mindsets, habits, and routines on 3 different pieces of paper and just kind of brainstorm what's working for me, what's not working for me in those areas, and really thinking about how to globalize what works for you. If you have a system around playing guitar, you are using executive function skills that you can learn to adapt to other situations. Anyhow, that's all I have. What's up? My name is Seth Perler again, and you can find me at executivefunctionlab.com or sethperler.com or executivefunctionsummit.com. But Executive Function Lab, for those of you who are interested in checking that out. And that is what I've got for you.